When two black veterans walked into a quiet southern diner, they expected coffee and peace. But when a racist cop tried to flex his badge, he underestimated the power of history, honor, and brotherhood. What happened next wasn't just a stand, it was a lesson the town would never forget. The sun had just begun its climb over the sleepy Appalachian town of Grayson, its warm fingers of light stretching across the rusted rooftops and cracked sidewalks. It was a town that wore its past like an old flannel jacket, comfortable for some, confining for others. Grayson had one main street, 2 traffic lights, and about 3,000 people who mostly knew each other by name or reputation. It was the kind of place where change didn't come easily, and neither did acceptance. On this particular Tuesday morning, the neon sign of Marge's home kitchen buzzed lazily as the door jingled open, letting in 2 men whose presence would shift the entire atmosphere of the diner. And, by day's end, the town itself. James J.J. Jackson and Malcolm Price had been friends since boot camp. J.J., tall and lean with silver streaks in his tight curls, walked with the slow precision of a man who had spent his life mastering control. Malcolm was broader, his stance commanding even when relaxed, his voice deep and steady like a bat. You didn't know you'd been missing until it hit. Both were in their late 50s, both wore clean button-down shirts tucked into jeans, and both still carried themselves like soldiers, which they had been for over 2 decades each. I forgot how good this place smelled, Malcolm said, grinning as they took a seat in the corner booth. Smells like cornbread and trouble, Jay chuckled. Smells like home, minus the trouble for now. Their laughter was genuine, warm, the kind that filled spaces and put people at ease. The waitress, a young white woman named Ellie with tired eyes and a kind smile, walked over with 2 mugs and a coffee pot. You gentlemen want breakfast menus, or just going straight for the good stuff? Straight for the good stuff, Malcolm said. Bacon, eggs, grits, and biscuits, if you got 'em. JJ nodded in agreement. Same here. And some of that peach jam I remember y'all making back in the day. Ellie grinned. Still make it fresh every Sunday. I'll be right back. The diner began to stir. A few of the older regulars looked over their newspapers, eyes narrowing. JJ and Malcolm noticed, but didn't acknowledge it. They'd seen this before. The silent appraisal, the subtle suspicion. Being black men in a southern diner was never just about eating breakfast. JJ leaned forward. You think people here still remember us? Malcolm sipped his coffee, shrugged. Maybe, but remembering and respecting ain't always the same thing. Outside, a police cruiser pulled into the gravel lot, dust kicking up as it rolled to a slow stop. Officer Brian Keller stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, mid-30s, clean-shaven with mirrored sunglasses, and the kind of stride that said he believed. The badge on his chest made him right before he even spoke. He walked into Marge's kitchen like he owned it, and for years, in a way, he had. Keller was Grayson's golden boy, the star linebacker in high school, the sheriff's nephew, and now one of the youngest officers on the force. Most people in town saw him as a protector, but there were others, particularly the few black and brown families in Grayson, who had felt the sting of his authority wielded like a hammer looking for a nail. The bell above the door jingled. Again, as Keller stepped inside, taking in the room with a quick sweep, his eyes landed on the booth in the corner. 2 black men. Unfamiliar faces. Or maybe not entirely unfamiliar. He approached. JJ noticed the shift in energy the moment Keller entered. The diner had gone quieter, and Ellie, returning from the kitchen, with 2 plates, slowed her pace. Mornin', Keller said, stopping at their table. You boys just passing through. Jay looked up slowly. Morning. We're not boys, but no, we grew up around here. Just came back to visit. Malcolm didn't smile. Something we can help you with, officer? Keller's tone was casual, but there was an edge to it. Funny, I don't recognize you, and we don't usually get unfamiliar faces in here this early. JJ's jaw tightened slightly. You probably wouldn't recognize us. We've been overseas most of our adult lives. Keller crossed his arms. Military? JJ reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a weathered leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal a retired Army ID. Malcolm did the same. Keller didn't even glance down. Well, ID or not, we've had some break-ins around this area recently. Can't be too careful. Malcolm leaned back in the booth, voice still calm. You think we broke into someone's house on the way to breakfast? Keller shrugged. Just asking questions. You wouldn't be offended by a little security, would you? Ellie arrived with the plates, placing them down as gently as she could, her hands slightly trembling. They're regulars here, she said quietly. They served with my uncle in Desert Storm. Keller ignored her. JJ kept his voice low. You've asked your questions, we answered. Now, unless you've got probable cause or a warrant, we're going to eat our breakfast. Keller's smile tightened. You got a smart mouth. Malcolm's voice dropped half an octave. And you got a badge, not a crown. Don't confuse the two. A few other diners were now watching closely. A couple sitting at the bar whispered. One man pulled out his phone and subtly began to record. Keller took a step closer. Let me see your driver's licenses. JJ sighed, reaching for his wallet again. Is there a reason you're escalating this, officer? I don't like attitude. And I don't like being harassed while eating bacon and eggs. Malcolm placed his license on the table slowly. Go ahead, check it. You'll see I'm clean, honorable discharge, and a Bronze Star. You can Google it. Keller stared at the IDs, then back at them. He said nothing, just stood for a moment, the gears in his mind clearly turning. He was trying to decide whether to push further or back down. Ellie cleared her throat. Officer Keller, is there something specific you're accusing them of? He turned his glare toward her. You should stay out of this. She didn't flinch. No, I shouldn't. My uncle said these men saved his life in Iraq. That's not something you forget. Jay met Keller's eyes. You can run our names, but while you're at it, maybe ask your chief who Sergeant First Class James Jackson and Master Sergeant Malcolm Price are. He'll know. The phone camera at the bar caught the tension, the cop's clenched jaw, the defiant posture of two veterans who'd faced worse than small-town suspicion, and the waitress standing beside them like a line drawn in the sand. Keller finally scoffed. Fine, enjoy your breakfast. He turned on his heel and walked out, the door swinging behind him with more force than necessary. The room remained silent for several seconds before quiet conversations resumed. Some hushed and uncomfortable. JJ let out a long breath. Didn't take long. Malcolm shook his head. Never does. Ellie looked between them. I'm so sorry. That shouldn't have happened. JJ gave her a small smile. You didn't do it, and you stood up. That means something. She nodded, still visibly upset. People will talk. That video. Someone will post it. Malcolm shrugged. Let em. Maybe it's time they see how things really are. JJ glanced out the window, watching Keller's cruiser disappear down the road. What they saw was a warning, he said quietly. What they do next, that's the test. By the time Officer Keller's cruiser disappeared into the humid haze of the mid-morning, the tension at Marge's home kitchen was as thick as the grits cooling on JJ and Malcolm's plates. Whispers stirred like smoke around the diner, not loud, not overt, but present. The sort of murmurs that could either become outrage or excuses that at the counter. A man in his 20s, skinny, white, with tattooed fingers gripping his phone tapped the screen. The recording he'd captured was clear, all 7 minutes of it. Keller's smug tone, the disrespectful boys, the veterans' calm resistance. Ellie's brave interjection. The young man's name was Nate Carlson, and he wasn't a local, not exactly. He was home from college for the summer, writing his thesis on racial dynamics in southern towns. And he had just stumbled into the most relevant case study imaginable. He uploaded the video to his social media with the caption, 2 decorated black veterans harassed by local cop while trying to eat breakfast. #Gracinga, #racism in uniform within 15 minutes. It had over 400 shares. Across town, Keller sat in his cruiser, fuming. He hadn't even run their licenses. Didn't need to. He knew they were clean. That wasn't the point. The point was control, and he'd lost it. In front of everyone. Worse, someone had recorded it. He'd seen the phone. He knew how fast these things moved now. He punched the steering wheel and cursed back at the diner. Malcolm and JJ finished their meals in silence. Ellie brought over the check, though they both noticed she'd already marked it paid. On the house, she said. Marge said so. JJ smiled softly. Tell her thanks. They stood to leave, but before they reached the door, a voice called out from one of the corner booths. Wait, an older man, maybe late 60s, white beard trimmed, wearing a Korean War veteran cap, stood up slowly, walking toward them with a cane. I saw what happened, he said. I've lived here all my life, and I've seen plenty, like Keller Burt. I've also seen men like you. Jay nodded respectfully. Appreciate it, sir. The man reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a business card. My granddaughter's a reporter at Channel 7 in Atlanta. You tell her what happened. She'll listen. Malcolm took the card. Thank you. That simple gesture marked a shift, a ripple in the still surface of Grayson. A few other diners looked away, but others nodded subtly, almost guiltily, as if realizing they should have spoken up too. The next few hours moved quickly. Nate's video had hit 5,000 shares before noon. It was reposted by a major civil rights page. Comments flooded in, half praising the veterans, half spewing denial or vitriol. The divide was sharp, the temperature rising. Keller, now in his office, at the station, watched the video loop on a fellow officer's phone. He paced, his boots loud on the linoleum. His supervisor, Captain Rhodes, a tired man with a gut full of stress and coffee, walked in holding a printed copy of the department's social media policy and a legal pad. What the hell happened, Brian? Rhodes asked, already knowing Keller tried to spin 2 guys in a diner, acting suspicious. I asked for ID, and suddenly I'm the villain. They weren't suspicious. They were eating *****ing breakfast. You weren't there? No, but half the damn internet was. Rhodes tossed the papers on the desk. We've got CNN calling. NBC in Atlanta wants a statement. You better pray they don't get hold of those men, or we're in for a firestorm. Keller clenched his jaw. So what? I'm suspended. Rhodes didn't answer right away. Meanwhile, JJ and Malcolm sat in a shaded park downtown. It had a small war memorial, stone names etched under an American flag that barely moved in the still air. They looked at it in silence for a long time. Finally said, You ever think we fought for a country that doesn't fight for us? JJ didn't respond immediately. Then, every damn day, their phones buzzed. Nate had messaged them a link. The video was viral. A local organizer wanted to talk. A former platoon mate of JJ's had recognized him and commented on the video. He saved 3 of us in Kandahar. That cop should be ashamed. Then another text. Ellie, y'all might want to get back to the diner. Reporter just showed up. They returned to find Channel 7's news van parked outside. A small crowd had gathered, a mix of curious townsfolk, a few students from the nearby community college, and a group holding signs that read, "Respect our veterans' dignity, doesn't have a skin tone. We see you." JJ and Malcolm. The reporter, a black woman in her 30s named Talia Monroe, greeted them warmly. "I've heard your names before," she said. "I covered a military commendation ceremony in Fort Benning a few years ago. I remember both of you." JJ smiled. A little stunned? "That's rare. Usually we're remembered for the wrong reasons." "Not today," Talia said. "Mind if we talk on camera?" They agreed. The interview was powerful. JJ spoke first, his voice calm, deliberate. "We didn't come here to cause trouble. We came home to remember where we started. We served this country because we believed in its promise, even when it didn't believe in us. But what happened this morning shows that the fight's not over." Malcolm added, "We're not here to shame anyone. We're here to remind folks that respect isn't optional, especially not for those who've paid for it in blood, sweat, and years they can't get back." When the segment aired that night, it lit a match under everything. The mayor issued a statement within hours. "We stand by our veterans. An internal investigation is underway." Captain Rhodes placed Keller on administrative leave, pending review. But the real turning point came the next morning. The diner was packed, not just with locals. People had driven in from nearby towns. Journalists lined the sidewalks. More signs, more support. JJ and Malcolm, uncomfortable with the sudden spotlight, stood near the back wall, sipping coffee as Ellie rushed orders and smiled like she hadn't slept. Then the door opened, and in walked Chief Harold Stevenson, Grayson's top lawman for over 20 years. A large black man in his 60s, white goatee, slow stride, and an aura that could silence a room without a word. He walked straight to JJ and Malcolm. "You two come with me," he said. "Not in trouble, just something you ought to hear." They followed him outside. He nodded toward the courthouse lawn across the street, where a crowd had gathered for a spontaneous community meeting. At the center of it stood an open mic and a folding table with a town seal on it. Chief Stevenson gestured. "They want to hear from you. Might not get a chance like this again." JJ looked at Malcolm. Malcolm nodded. They walked to the mic. Spoke first. "This isn't about just us," he said. "It's about every person who's ever been treated like they didn't belong in their own country. We wore the flag on our uniforms. We saluted it, bled for it. We still believe in it. But belief needs action." Then Malcolm, "This town has a choice. You can keep pretending race doesn't matter, or you can face it head on. We didn't ask to be symbols, we just wanted breakfast. But now that the world's watching, maybe y'all should decide what kind of town you want them to see." There was applause, some hesitant, some loud, but there was also something deeper, stirring a reckoning. By that evening, the video of their speech had gone national. MSNBC called it a master class in dignity. Veterans groups across the country voiced support. A retired general tweeted, "These men represent what real service looks like, not just in war, but in peace." At the diner, Ellie watched it all from her phone, tears running silently down her cheeks. Meanwhile, in his dim apartment, Keller watched too, alone, angry, defensive, and slowly shaken, because even he couldn't deny the truth in their words. The following days rolled in like thunder over a prayer low at first, distant but building momentum and impossible to ignore. Grayson, Georgia found itself the reluctant stage for a conversation it had long avoided. The names James, JJ, Jackson, and Malcolm Price were now not just whispered across diner booths, they were spoken on national broadcasts, posted across veterans forums, and invoked in conversations from barbershops to boardrooms. But neither man sought the spotlight. After their brief public address, JJ and Malcolm had retreated quietly to JJ's late mother's house, a modest brick bungalow on the east side of town. It was quiet there, familiar. JJ had spent his youth climbing the oak trees out back. Malcolm remembered sleeping in the guest room after high school parties. Now it was a place of refuge. On the third morning, JJ sat at the kitchen table sipping lukewarm coffee. Malcolm was on the porch, reading messages on his phone. The outpouring had been overwhelming. Fellow vets, activists, neighbors, strangers. But amid the support were also threats and venom. Slurs, denial, hate. America still spoke in two voices. "You see this?" Malcolm called. "CNN wants to do a follow-up. And that congresswoman from Savannah sent her team a message. Says she's drafting a veteran dignity bill. Wants our names on it." JJ shook his head. "We didn't sign up for any of this." "Yeah," Malcolm said. "But the country keeps signing us up anyway." There was a knock at the door. JJ opened it to find Chief Harold Stevenson standing tall in his pressed uniform, hat in hand. "Gentlemen," he said with a respectful nod, "may I come in?" Inside, Stevenson sat at the kitchen table and got to the point. I want to be clear, he said. Keller's conduct was unprofessional and disgraceful. I've recommended to the disciplinary board that he be suspended without pay, pending a mandatory retraining program. If he refuses, I'll move to have him removed from the force. JJ raised an eyebrow. Retraining. Stevenson nodded. Our town's never had a civil rights training program. That's changing now. Implicit bias training, community engagement, the whole 9 yards. It's not perfect, but it's something. Malcolm leaned forward. Is Keller on board with any of this? The chief hesitated. He's not happy, but he'll go, or he'll go away. JJ folded his hands. It's a start. Stevenson looked them both in the eye. What you said on that mic, that wasn't just for Grayson. That was for all of us. I know this isn't the recognition you wanted, but damn if it wasn't earned. As the chief left, the veterans exchanged a glance, one of cautious optimism. Later that afternoon, the town square was buzzing again. This time it wasn't a protest or a spontaneous rally. It was a scheduled event, hosted by the city council, labeled as a unity gathering. There were speeches, prayer circles, and booths from local organizations. But what truly drew the crowd was the unveiling of a mural painted across the side of Marge's home kitchen. It depicted two black soldiers standing in a field of dust, saluting a tattered American flag. The expressions on their faces were determined, not defeated. At the bottom, painted in bold script, freedom is a promise kept only when shared by all. Ellie, wearing an apron stained with syrup and flour, stood beside the mural with tears. In her eyes, JJ and Malcolm were ushered to the front. The mayor, a wiry white man with too much gel in his hair, cleared his throat and raised a mic. I won't pretend this week has been easy, he began. But sometimes a town needs to be rattled to wake up. Today, we honored two men who didn't just serve their country, they challenged us to live up to its ideals. J.J. Jackson, Malcolm Price. We thank you. There was applause. Some loud, some reluctant, but it was there. Then a soft voice spoke up. I served with them. All eyes turned to an elderly white man near the back of the crowd, pushing a walker with a faded 101st Airborne patch sewn onto the seat. His name was Hank Simmons. He'd served in Iraq. He'd once stood silently during racial debates in town, but not today. They don't just wear medals, Hank said. They earned them. And more than that, they kept earning them long after the war ended. He looked at the younger men in the crowd. You don't salute a uniform, you salute the man inside it. More applause, louder now. A chant began softly. Respect, respect, respect. That night, as the town began to settle, a different kind of confrontation unfolded. Brian Keller sat in a community room inside the police department. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The walls were lined with folding chairs, most filled with fellow officers, town council members, and local citizens. At the front stood an instructor, a black woman in her 40s named Dr. Lisa Monroe, a civil rights educator flown in from Atlanta. Keller slouched in his chair, arms crossed. His jaw was tight, defiant. Dr. Monroe didn't call him out. Instead, she opened with a slide. It showed JJ in uniform. Blood streaked across his sleeve, carrying a wounded soldier through a smoke-filled desert. Then Malcolm, crouched behind a barricade, shielding civilians from crossfire in Mosul. These men, she said, are what you call heroes. What we need to ask ourselves is, when they come home, why don't we treat them like it? She walked the room through statistics, testimonies, historical context. She didn't accuse, she educated. And slowly, the temperature shifted. Some officers nodded, others took notes. Keller said nothing. Then Dr. Monroe asked, Mr. Keller, would you like to share your thoughts? He looked around. All eyes were on him. I didn't mean to disrespect them, he muttered. I was doing my job. She stepped forward. What was the job? Silence. To protect and serve, she continued. Not to intimidate, not to humiliate. That's the standard. Something cracked behind Keller's eyes. Not a breakdown, not yet. But the beginning of a reckoning? After the session, he lingered. At his desk, he pulled up the video of the diner encounter one more time. He watched JJ's face, calm, firm, not angry, just disappointed. He saw Malcolm's hands still open, not threatening. He saw Ellie standing beside them. Fear in her voice, but courage in her heart. He closed the video and sat back. Maybe he hadn't just been doing his job. Maybe he'd failed it. The next morning, a quiet knock came at JJ's door. It was Keller, unarmed, plain clothes, no badge. Malcolm stepped forward, tension clear in his shoulders. Keller raised a hand slowly. I'm not here to defend myself. JJ looked him over. Then why are you here? Keller struggled. I came to say I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Silence. JJ didn't move. Neither did Malcolm. Keller pressed on. I thought I was protecting something. The town, the people. But really, I was protecting my own ignorance. And that's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Malcolm spoke, voice even. What do you want from us? Nothing, Keller said. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. JJ stepped forward. Good. Then keep doing it. And make sure the next man with a badge learns from your mistakes. Keller nodded once and turned to leave. No forgiveness was given. None was asked for, but something had changed. Weeks passed. The headlines faded. The story moved on. But in Grayson, change had taken root. The police department added community liaisons. Schools implemented local history programs. The town began an annual Unity and Service Day in honor of veterans of all backgrounds. JJ and Malcolm stayed. A few more weeks, attending cookouts, mentoring local teens, reconnecting with old friends. But eventually, they packed their bags. On their last morning, Ellie handed them 2 jars of peach jam, fresh from the kitchen. "Come back any time," she said. JJ smiled. "Next time, maybe no cameras." "Next time," she said, "there'll just be breakfast." They got into Malcolm's truck and drove out of town, the diner shrinking in the rearview mirror. "I never thought," JJ said, "that standing up in a booth would shake a whole town." Malcolm grinned. "Sometimes all it takes is sitting down in the right one." Epilogue. Months later, the mural remained, faded a little by rain and time, but never defaced. New customers stopped by Marge's kitchen just to take a photo. Veterans passed through and felt seen. Ellie got promoted. Nate graduated and published a full-length thesis titled Booth of Resistance, Race, Power, and Public Accountability in the Modern South. And as for Keller, he completed every session of retraining, applied for a transfer to a diverse metro department. Last word was, he was walking a beat, attending town halls, and according to rumor even joined a mentorship program for young officers of color. People don't always change, but sometimes, when the mirror is clear enough, they try. And sometimes, trying is where justice begins.